Hey guys, welcome back. So with our recent conversations on Godzilla and Mechagodzilla, I figured we'd go back and cover the all-out brawl that took place in the 2011 Godzilla Kingdom of Monsters series. So if you're enjoying these videos, make sure to drop a like, subscribe so you can catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for the majority of this, we'll be talking about Godzilla King of Monsters Issue 10, written by Jason Ciaramella, because the main fight between Mechagodzilla, Godzilla, and King Ghidorah goes down in this issue. But because this picks up as a continuation from a cliffhanger, I want to go back and talk about some of the events that led up to this point. Because this series starts with Godzilla just emerging out of the ocean off the coast of Japan. So quickly they scramble their fighter jets, they're shooting missiles, firing rounds, just trying to get him out of there, but none of that's working. And with Godzilla continuing to make his way up the coast of Japan towards Tokyo Bay, the Prime Minister's advised to nuke this thing before the casualties go through the roof. So they launch a nuke from one of their subs while observing the attack by way of drone footage, and at this time they were all under the impression that this was going to be a Godzilla grand opening, grand closing situation. But spoiler alert, it wasn't, because where's the fun in that? And instead of this nuke doing any damage to Godzilla, it instead charged him up and activated his atomic breath. And 3 hours later, he was in Tokyo showing out. And shortly after this, a number of other monsters started to emerge all around the globe. Rodan hatched from an egg in Russia and took to the skies, while Anguirus just showed up in Mexico. So an advisor from the Japanese government, Dr. Yamada, attended a meeting with the United Nations, with it being said that he was the first scientist to study this extraordinary phenomenon and go on to name and categorize each of these unidentified species. While in other places, you had music artists like Girly Yaya, who is an advocate for MEALS, which stands for Monster Equality and Living Standards. And I mean, I like some of the Girly Yaya songs, but what does she know about Godzilla? But no, seriously, I bring her up because she's one of the few people throughout this series who are kind of making some sense. And I mean, aside from her saying Texas should be destroyed, because I mean, that's wild. Because she believes that all of this is a part of nature, and the monsters are the victims because they're being attacked by weapons of mass destruction. Which I mean, that latter part, it almost checks out. And for a quick second, they go over to Korean rapper Gochu, who just grabs the mic and says US President Ogden doesn't care about Asian people. And it's just like, man, the Lady Gaga and Kanye references are spot on. But to take it a step further, President Ogden is a parody of Barack Obama, so there's that too. But on top of that, with more monsters showing up and Lady Yaya advocating for them at every performance, it wasn't long before it came to the point where Godzilla made his way to the US, with him first touching down in California. So from here, the United States president sent out the order for a number of soldiers to evacuate the people of California, including retired veteran Sergeant Stephen Woods, who's well decorated. And just 3 weeks prior to all of this, he received the Medal of Honor from the president. And around this time, he was given a device that would inform him of where the different monsters were migrating and if they were close by, only for him to get Godzilla and Anguirus show up in California and tear the place apart. And for the record, Godzilla won. And with Sergeant Woods barely surviving this clash, we're shown for a moment here that he just leaves two of these actors who are stuck in a limo hanging up on some wreckage up there to die as Godzilla hits them with his atomic breath. But this just plays into a part of the story where he's talking about the terrible state that the world is in, so he just thinks it'll be better without two actors from a show called Jerseyfied. But after this, when he comes across a little girl named Allie, really it's here where we're shown his human side, because after finding Allie, he's taking care of her throughout the rest of this story, because just recently, Godzilla killed her whole family. And when it happened, it wasn't like a oops, my bad kind of thing, but it was more like the case of Godzilla seeing this traffic jammed highway packed with people who are trying to leave California just so they can get away from them. So Godzilla just lights up this entire highway with his atomic breath, killing just about everyone out here simply because they were in his way. Which, I know, it's kinda dark. But it's here where Sergeant Woods finds this little girl named Allie, who is pretty much the sole survivor on this highway after spending the night out here all by herself. So he takes her with him and he tells her, don't worry, I won't let anything happen to you. Everything is going to be alright. But she's just like, I don't believe you. That's what daddy said. And he lied. And I mean, what do you tell the kid after that? But following this, the president makes an announcement on television, telling the citizens of America that he's going forward with Operation Two Birds, One Stone. after being briefed by Dr. Yamada, as well as the other members of his think tank, who together came up with the one solution that'll solve their monster problem and also rebuild the economy, which from there is where he announces Mechagodzilla, who soon after they start building at the MG assembly plant located in Detroit, Michigan, and 1 month later, they present to the world Mechagodzilla. And you know, they're really over the top with it, you know, like America, with the whole crowd chanting USA and all that. But after this whole presentation with the mayor of Detroit giving his speech and all that, they immediately send Mechagodzilla after Godzilla. But initially with how this is done, the mech does not have a physical pilot, and instead they just control it remotely until Godzilla destroys the remote stability and logic sensors, which now causes the president's team to completely lose control of Mechagodzilla, who from here just takes off on his own, and he starts attacking Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown. And it just has me thinking like, man, this is what New York people feel like when every other comic, story, movie, or show has something attacking New York. But either way, Mechagodzilla's just going crazy in Atlanta, and unfortunately, we don't have a Mecha Hellcat to defend us. So Atlanta just gets wrecked, and while this is happening, we then head over to the mountains of Asia, where for a moment we see a guy sacrifice himself with the hopes of becoming one with the Dragon King to become a force of righteousness in the world of beasts, as it's written in an ancient prophecy. And even though this guy intended to do the heroic thing, he instead just awakens King Ghidorah, who for millions of years was already doing the life force absorption thing in order to restore itself. And right away, King Ghidorah makes his way straight to Godzilla, who at this point has now made his way further east to Washington, DC. And it doesn't take him long to get there, but when he does, it's on sight. So Godzilla's attacking him with his atomic breath, King Ghidorah's using his gravity beams, and after a while of just trading blasts and hits and bites back and forth, with the both of them withstanding each other's power, eventually Godzilla hits King Ghidorah with the blast from his atomic breath that causes King Ghidorah to tap out. So from here we go back to Sergeant Woods and Allie, where in their case they've made their way southeast, with Sergeant Woods using the monster finding device to instead avoid them and keep little Allie safe. But the whole way he's just been having a rough time. They run into scavengers, at one point he was bitten by a snake, and eventually him and Allie find themselves cornered by a pack of coyotes. And with the two of them making their way as far as Alabama, they finally run into some luck when the damaged rogue Mechagodzilla comes through, blasting these coyotes, and soon after falling over. So Sergeant Woods takes Allie inside the mech, where he then finds that no one's inside. And when they make their way to the pilot room, he ends up switching Mechagodzilla into manual mode, and he's able to get it up and running again. But as soon as he does, Anguirus pops up, so Sergeant Woods has to more or less learn how to use Mechagodzilla by fighting and figuring out the different controls at the same time. And it ends up working out, because eventually he defeats Anguirus, and because the president's men have been trying to reconnect back to the rogue Mechagodzilla this whole time, it's here where they finally get a connection. But it's only to the communications and radio system, as well as the camera system, so the president can see what Sergeant Woods sees, and they can communicate back and forth. But as you would imagine, the president wasn't expecting to find anyone in the pilot room. So for a moment, the president's like, "Who are you?" So the sergeant fills him in, and President Ogden orders him to bring Mechagodzilla back to Detroit. And no matter what, do not engage with Godzilla. And Sergeant Woods hears what the president's saying. But at this point, it's a little too late for that, because now he's face to face with Godzilla. And for Sergeant Woods, we also find out, with him now having the opportunity to actually fight Godzilla, there's a bit of personal history there, which was shown by way of a flashback, with him saying, "I lived with my mother and father in a small city in Northern California. Being in the military kept me away from home a lot. I was 4 miles from home when it happened. Just 4 miles. I couldn't believe my eyes. No words could describe it. Everything I knew and loved was gone in an instant." Which for Sergeant Woods, this is him sharing his history with Allie, telling her how he lost the people closest to him during a Godzilla attack, much like she did. But it's pretty crazy how we get this flashback just before the fight, because there's a number of times where we see the sergeant talking to his mother throughout this series. But after he meets Allie, he tells her his parents are dead. And I mean, he says it in a nicer way, because he just tells her, "My parents are with yours," which comes off as confusing until we see this flashback that we're given after. But with it being done this way, just before the fight, it shows us how much this means to Sergeant Woods. And throughout this fight, he's now dealing with this conflict between taking this opportunity to get his payback or prioritizing getting Allie somewhere safe. But with how this goes down, fighting Godzilla is how you keep Allie safe, because there's not really much of any other safe places for him to take the kid at the moment. So he really doesn't have much of any other choice than to fight. And this whole time, poor little Allie, she's just terrified. And I mean, she's okay, but she's terrified. And I mean, rightfully so. And it comes to a point in this matchup where Sergeant Woods has Mechagodzilla throwing hands with Godzilla. Like, it turns into a straight up boxing match, which he really doesn't have much of any other choice than to do, since Mechagodzilla's already damaged, so a ton of the weapons are not operational. And aside from that, he's still learning how to use this thing. But after throwing hands for a while, in Godzilla, he's putting the paws or claws on Mechagodzilla too. But right after this boxing match, King Ghidorah gets right back up, and it just makes the sergeant and the president, and really everyone who's involved, feel like this situation just went from bad to worse. And right now the president still has his men trying to override Mechagodzilla's controls just to get them out of there, but they're still not able to do it. And in what turns out to be a twist of events, King Ghidorah just flies past Mechagodzilla and goes straight for Godzilla, because as it turns out, he's trying to get his lick back. And it causes Allie to ask if the one with all the heads is a good guy. And Sergeant Woods is just like, I'm not taking a chance. So he shoots out these two Titan-sized tasers that latch into both Godzilla and King Ghidorah to let off a huge electrical charge. And now that Mechagodzilla's gained the upper hand, the president tells Sergeant Woods that throughout this fight, Mechagodzilla has been absorbing the energy from Godzilla's atomic breath, and he needs to redirect all of that energy back at the two of them right now, which at first has Sergeant Woods like, I got this. But the president tells him, no, you need to listen up if you want to get Allie out of there alive. So the sergeant looks at the kid for a minute and then he's like, okay, tell me what I need to do. So the president tells him how to focus all of the energy to Mechagodzilla's plasma grenade. So the sergeant complies and he lets these two titans have it, which pretty much from here gives this story its happy ending, because now Allie's safe, Barack Obama's happy, and Mechagodzilla's able to head back to the shop. So the sergeant apologizes about having the attitude earlier, and the president just gets him to shut off the manual controls, so his men can remote pilot it back to Detroit and give Mechagodzilla the Midas touch. So yeah, that pretty much does it for this whole fight and the events leading up to it. Because going forward from here, the story does take a bit of a turn, and I mean it more so puts the focus back on Godzilla, rather than taking a turn because it is a Godzilla series after all. But after this, you really just have these mysterious twins who have been traveling across the world to the other different monsters and stealing their different powers. So now with Godzilla weakened, they see this as an opportunity to take his. But yeah, that's more of another tale for another time. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.